Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Time Under Tension. Today, we will be on episode 18, and we are kicking off a new series on behavior change. So, with the start of the new year, I think this is an appropriate topic, and it's something that I like to come back to pretty often in my own life because when I find myself up against wanting to change my behavior or change something about my life, being able to remember that there's a process for it is helpful for getting out of the emotions, the fear that often hold me back from actually making the changes necessary.
Yeah, I think having a process is absolutely a great way to frame it because from personal experience, is such a hard, there is such a hard point in time where it's so hard to alleviate the emotions from being the thing that drives our behavior and dictates how we feel about ourselves and then gets into our mindset. And if we don't have that process built in and these things that we know can get us out of that emotional dysregulation, we're kind of left up to that uncertainty of our emotions. And the process really brings us back to, okay, I'm emotionally out of sorts right now, but I have my process. I can get right into it and still work through the emotion that's there to the other side to make sure that I'm showing up and making the change in the behavior that I so deeply desire.
Exactly. And, we talk a lot about mental health on this show, and I think it's super important to note that feeling those emotions is okay. And I think it's important to validate them, understand that they are always valid. And there's probably a deeper reason why you're feeling the emotions that you are. But you have this power that surpasses being driven by emotion. And that's being able to step outside of the feeling after recognizing it and saying, okay, I see this. Maybe I should address the why behind what I'm feeling here to help kind of reason and rationalize. But that doesn't have to be the driving force of behavior. But understanding that you're going to need an even deeper force driving you because you can't just say you're going to ignore the emotions and charge on regardless unless you have a direction in which to go, which I think is some of the importance of setting like a more long-term goal.
Mhm.
So today we're talking about the trans-theoretical model of behavior change. So again, just kind of putting in a process to something that can be kind of overwhelming and um, it can seem like a one-step process sometimes. Like once I have enough discomfort in my life, or once I have enough willpower, then I will be able to make this decision. And I think it's important to note that the in chemistry there's this idea of activation energy and the energy needed to create a chemical reaction, like to initiate the process of a chemical reaction. And once it's initiated, it often takes a lot less energy to sustain the reaction. But getting over that hump of inertia where you're sitting still can be one of the hardest places to make that move. um, so I was actually writing my book today, and I want to celebrate that since last episode I talked a little bit about how frustrated I was with that. And I have written every day this week, and I'm up to about an hour a day with ease, which is super exciting. And I wrote today, change is a threshold event. The pain of stagnancy must outweigh the fear of moving towards the unknown. Independently, motivation, knowledge, and value misalignment do not create lasting change. However, when each of these factors swell in unison to a degree that threatens to drown our identity, we're forced to change either our behavior or our worldview before the internal dissonance fractures our sense of self. So it takes a combination of forces, I think, to kind of push us to that point of actually getting past the inertia, but then understanding that that's sometimes we can use some motivation to push ourselves up, but after that there are further stages, and being able to understand what you need to do in each stage to leverage further progress, I think is really important and really helpful as you start to progress towards sustaining change.
Yeah. I think that speaks to why you're going to be a successful author in the future.
Thank you. I'm just super proud that I've been able to instill that habit a little bit better this week. And I have zero doubt in my mind that our conversation last week was a huge driving force for just getting to that point of discomfort, that internal dissonance of like, I have this place I want to be and want to go, and this kind of person that I want to be, and I'm actively not living it. And that was really helpful in overcoming that.
Do you want to walk people through just the steps and kind of talk about maybe just the first couple that, or maybe you want to talk about an overview how you worked through this process to get yourself to writing every day? Just because that's the behavior change you wanted, maybe just touch on each section as we overview it to help others understand how you are implementing this process into your own journey and how maybe there's different points in time now that you touch on one specifically that's really helped you kind of move the needle.
Definitely. So, as a general overview of the model, there are 5 stages of behavior change. And I'd highly recommend, if you're listening to this, to maybe look up some images of the Transtheoretical model of behavior change. So if you're a visual person, to kind of see what this process looks like. I like most when it's presented as a circle, because a lot of times we kind of move through life learning the same lessons on repeat circularly. But I did like this image that I'm going to be sharing if you're watching this, that has it in kind of a stepwise manner. So in this model, there's 5 stages. We have pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance. And in each stage, there is kind of a task or a leverage point where you can implement some kind of behavior that will help push you to that next stage, which is always the goal, because we want to be working towards that state of maintenance where we don't really have to consciously be making a decision every single day. Initially, we're going to feel a lot of resistance and we may overcome inertia, but to actually habitualize something where it becomes just part of your routine and you're not really thinking about it anymore takes a long time. Something like brushing your teeth, for instance, is something that hopefully many of us do on a daily basis. I would encourage you, if you're not currently brushing your teeth, everyone would be grateful if you did. But as kids,
Mouthwash is a shortcut, but it's hard.
I don't know if you've ever been around a toddler or tried to get them to brush their teeth. It can be a very dramatic experience, and it can require a lot of just efforts to make the experience as fun as possible, from like cartoonized toothbrushes to like toothpaste that tastes like bubble gum to like playing airplane with the toothbrush. Like, it takes a lot, and then eventually at some point it just becomes a habit, but we often forget that it took a lot of struggle to start with. So the first place we start is pre-contemplation, where you're not really aware that there's a problem. In my journey with writing, I think for a long time, I didn't write, and I didn't really know that that was an issue until I began writing and started to recognize how much it helps me process. And when I'm not using it as a tool to write, whether that's journaling or in this case, writing a book, I'm kind of missing this creative outlet that I need. And I'm missing this outlet for processing that I definitely need in order to be in my best state emotionally.
Mhm.
So in that state, you have to create awareness. You have to potentially change your values and beliefs. Like I said, either you're going to change, your hand is forced, or you're going to change the way that you look at the world so you're not living in dissonance. So if you're saying, I'm only successful if I'm working out 5 days a week, and you consistently find yourself only working out 4, either you're going to get so uncomfortable and frustrated that you make it happen, you end up going to the gym 5 days a week, or you reframe and say, actually, I'm a fit person if I go to the gym 4 days a week. Kind of a strange example, but it works in a lot of different ways where we just have to either change our belief about it or we have to change our behavior, or else we're just going to have to blind ourselves or numb ourselves to the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So then contemplation is when we move into awareness. So somehow we've created awareness, whether someone else has told us we need to change a behavior, or we kind of understand that something is destructive, or we understand that a certain behavior may be like desirable and beneficial in our lives. So we know that there's a problem. We know that there's something that needs to be done or needs to be changed. And in that state, we need persuasion and motivation. So, motivation, remember, is not like a lasting fuel, but it can be helpful because this is the stage in which you start to really face that inertia. So, this is a stage where a lot of people, going with like the fitness example, I think will expose themselves to maybe accounts on Instagram that help motivate them. Like or one thing that I did was when I was really trying to get into consistent fitness habits, I listened to the book Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. And there's so much persuasion and motivation in that book. I felt like it really gave me that momentum to be like, all right, I can do this. Like, I know I can make a change. I know that there's a change that needs to be made. I know I can make a change. And then I was moving into that next stage of preparation, which was like, okay, so I know I need to change now. I think I can. How do I make a change?
Yeah, I love that you're talking about the awareness there, but also the motivation piece. Because in my mind, it resonates more like, what is the why? Like, why am I doing this thing? Because if you don't have something that you actually care about in this place, you won't move to the preparation stage. And sometimes we can get caught in that contemplation, between contemplation versus preparation, or sometimes it's the preparation before the action, but it shows up in the same way where we're like, okay, I'm aware of this problem, I know it's a problem, but if there's no real desire to change it, maybe somebody brought the problem to you, but you're like, been having the problem for a long time. My life still seems fine. It's like you have to figure out what's going to bring about that inner state change of caring about making sure that the behavior actually changes. Because if we enter into that place, and most of the time, that's where we enter these stages, right? Like if we're not aware, then we don't know what we don't know. So the pre-contemplation stage is mostly about either someone else is bringing it to you that it's a problem, or you start to experience something you're not really sure why. Like for me, I was having symptoms with not being able to have clear vision. I wasn't able to really sit or stand for a while, and all of these things were like, okay, like something's definitely off, but I'm not changing my workout behavior, I'm not changing my food intake at that point. So we enter into it at the contemplation stage where somebody told us, or we become aware that something in this area of our symptoms, if we want to say that in general, something that we're doing is causing this symptom that we don't desire anymore. So I just want to throw that in there because we can't have, again, the awareness at that pre-contemplation stage. It's usually about someone else bringing it to us, or something symptomatic causes us to become aware. Once we get that self-awareness, making sure we lock in our why, I think it was just something I wanted to add in there as monumental to actually working towards something that's in that preparation stage, which we'll talk about. I know, in a couple of episodes or next episode, our intention to take the action, if it's rooted in the wrong motivation, like you're saying, isn't going to create lasting change. It might create change for a couple days or a week, but if you don't have the motivation that's rooted in something you truly care about, like for me, I care about living my life, with you and being able to pursue my purpose, I got to figure out how to prepare myself to take on this massive journey of not working out, actually not moving. And I have to start eating a lot more. I need to start paying attention to my nutrients. I need to start paying attention to what my body's telling me I need. But if I didn't have the intention, like if there was nothing else, say I just wanted to do it because you told me to, like, all right, I love you and I care about you, just like someone else would about someone else sharing. So yeah, I'll do it for a couple of days, but like the day I'm not really feeling it, or the day I get scared to keep pushing because of things that are changing, all of a sudden I revert back and I'm not able to create lasting change.
Absolutely. I love that you brought up having a why. There was a quote I heard this week that I just keep going back to because I just think it's so powerful. It's from Alice in Wonderland, and the Cheshire Cat says, "Where are you going?" And Alice said, "Which way should I go?" And the cat said, "Well, that depends on where you're going." She said, "I don't know." The cat said, "Well, then it doesn't matter which way you go." And it's like, until we have a direction, it doesn't really matter what we're doing. Like, you have a behavior that you want to change. Okay, but like, where are you going? What are you wanting to change to? And it's like, if you don't know what you're changing to, like maybe you're uncomfortable. Maybe you're at that stage of contemplation where you're aware that there's a problem, but like you don't have the sense of direction or your why, like you're saying. It's kind of like you start running in some direction that you think is going to be different than the state you're in right now, but like it might not be the answer. And I think
Right.
having that why at that stage is really important, or else the brain's stupid smart. It'll find a way to get you out of your current situation, but you'll probably run right into something else. So I
Mhm.
think understanding that you should be at that stage not only aware, but you should be an active participant in creating the future that you want to move towards, at least vaguely,
Right.
so that you know which direction to take a step into. And that I think goes into that preparation stage of like, before you take action in the preparation stage, you have that intention to take action. But if you want to know what's going to be the right action, you need to know what you're even working towards. And that's
Mhm.
where your leverage point is adding in education and making sure that okay, maybe there's a blueprint because someone else has followed this path before, or maybe I have a mentor, or maybe God has kind of placed something on my heart and all I know is that's the next step. But like, you got to have a direction before you start driving. Like, point your car in the direction you want to go, right? The motivation's the fuel, but just with motivation, you're just gonna what? Run into what? It's going to just be a passive process unless you kind of have that sense of direction from the start.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then moving in, once you've educated yourself, received education, whatever that looks like, and we'll go into each of these in more detail in the next episodes, you move into the action stage. And this is where a lot of people get stuck. And this is probably the longest stage for most people because it's not going to be perfect from the start in most cases. Like I said with my writing, I told myself, all right, I have to write every day. And then I found that if I didn't schedule a time to write, it didn't really happen. So then I said, okay, well, I'll just write in the afternoon. And I'm like, oh, well, I tried to do that and I'm too tired and I have lower motivation. So I don't really have enough fuel to get going at that point in the day. So this week, which has been now a 6-day streak, has been every morning right after the gym. I go get a coffee, so I get something that I like that I already enjoy, and I tie it to this new behavior, which is coming into the office and writing. And I only write in our little unicorn beanbag chair, Eugene. So it's like this unique space in which I don't really do anything else. And now I'm practicing the desired behavior, which is what you're doing in the action stage. But understand that that process of even figuring out the action took months to be honest. And
Right.
more acutely, it's definitely taken at least the past 2 weeks to really make this effective action.
That is definitely something I wanted to mention before we hop into the maintenance stage is this little guy who's, making his way happily up these stairs in this photo. He's probably hanging out on these steps much longer than you would walk up a normal set of stairs. Like this process is going to take a long time, most of the time. And really, I guess my point in sharing that is something that is so important is your mindset in this. And I've been studying mindset intensely for a little bit now, but definitely heightened since I started coaching clients more from an athletic standpoint, but also just lifestyle clients. Your mindset is so massively important in this process because if you go into, all right, I'm fired up, I got my why, I'm preparing, I'm ready, I'm excited, I have all this momentum, and then I go into the action and I fail or I revert back and I get in this mindset of shame and guilt and self-doubt and not getting curious about why it was that it didn't work. Like you just talked through this process about how you realized that with writing, you couldn't write in the afternoon because you realize you're more mentally fatigued at that time. That, okay, if you would have been like, maybe this isn't right. Maybe I'm not supposed to write and just got down on yourself instead of getting curious about, okay, well, how could I maybe like switch up the time, or how could I find a special spot? Maybe that's what I needed. Maybe I needed to get a coffee first. Like get curious about what's going on, start seeing it as an opportunity to learn about yourself and find practices that actually work for you. Because when you work through this one time with a behavior, a lot of the times you're able to repeat a similar pattern in this process that helps you create more behavior change for other certain areas of your life that you want to create lasting change, which is just so cool. It's like failing needs to be redefined a lot when you don't necessarily get it right, or it seems like it's taking a long time, making sure that it's okay to feel initially like frustrated or really struggling with insecurity about it, or maybe starting to lose a little hope. In those moments, creating that awareness, having that self-awareness that your mind's going there and starting to get curious about it will absolutely create a whole new perspective on this entire journey for you that'll make it a little bit more fun and a little bit more introspective. And not only that, but again, like I'm saying, you're going to uncover parts of you that are going to help you create lasting change moving forward whenever you face another situation where you're like, I got a problem. This is a problem. I need to change this, but I've already done it. And I've worked through that. And it was exciting to figure out how to make sure I could get to a maintenance stage. And then at that point, I was confident and I know I can do hard things. At that point, I can understand I get to maintenance and I'm working to sustain the behavior. Same thing. It's not always going to happen right away. This is going to be a long process. Most of the time, when you have these patterns that you're not even aware of, probably means they were deeply ingrained in you in some sort of early childhood experience or preteen time. Once we get to maintenance and work through the action to the maintenance piece, you're still going to have setbacks occasionally. If you're tired, if you're not sleeping, if you're hungry, certain things about your emotions will come up, like we talked about in the beginning. And if we can step out, like you said, step out and parent, you said that to me. I'm going through this process right now. I'm in the maintenance stage, but I'm struggling sometimes with it. And my emotions get the best of me. And you say these things to me that really stick, like parent that emotion, be the parent that you want to have, that you want to be later on in your life. Like, how would you have addressed this if this was your inner child, which it is for me? It's like, care about it, get compassionate, show compassion, really help that emotion understand that it doesn't have to be this way forever and it's okay to feel this way, but we can do it. We can push through. It's okay to have setbacks. That's totally fine. But what did you learn in it? All right, awesome. Let's try again.
That is so great. As a coach, when I take someone on, I like to build out a timeline of where we're at and where we're going. Because a lot of times people come to me with kind of a long-term goal and it can be a little bit vague, and that's okay. I help them clarify that over time. But maybe their goal is, I want to be healthy, I want to have a good relationship with food. And sometimes it is a weight goal as well. Like, I'd like to be back in this weight range because I feel the best at that. I'm like, awesome. Okay. That's going to take a long time. Honestly, for a lot of people, this is going to be over a year process, just depending on the person. It's not necessarily a year to reach their weight loss goals or, to get on stage, but to actually change behavior that's been practiced, because that's what you're doing every day is you're practicing behavior. If you've been practicing a behavior for, I don't know, 27 years of your life, then it's going to take a little bit more than 8 weeks, an 8-week kickstart program to reach your goal of actually making sustainable change and getting to that maintenance phase. So the first 6 to 10 weeks, depending on the person, on their timeline is always foundations. It's building the foundation of the wall. I don't usually put, goal of this phase is to cut, goal of this phase is to grow, goal of this phase is to prep. No, it's foundations because it's about the mental. If we don't establish that mental scaffolding, then we don't have a solid enough foundation from which to build this wall. It's too shaky. When you run into, even if someone is executing perfectly, when they run into some obstacle, they're going to default to their old behavior because they're suddenly overwhelmed. So taking that time to build the scaffolding means taking time to, like you say, fail forward, where you say, okay, what happened this week? And what I like to say is, what challenges did you overcome this week? Because it's not about, did you follow the plan or not? It's like, what challenges did you face this week? Oh, you found that when you went out to do errands, you end up being out longer than you thought, and then you don't have meals packed with you. And then you either end up not eating at all or you end up going and eating out. Awesome.
Mhm.
We just got a little bit more data and probably a really key insight into why a plan hasn't worked in the past. So, how do we plan ahead to prevent this obstacle from continually tripping you up? Because it's going to probably do that in a pattern. It's like, okay, this week our focus is going to be prepping all of your meals and having them with you. Awesome. That worked really well. Great. What challenges did you face this week? And it's going from week to week, not just to say, okay, you're practicing the good behavior, but like, let's see how many obstacles we can just run through. I love when someone comes to me and within the first 3 weeks, they have some like massive life event. I know that's crazy and it's probably kind of sadistic, but man, I had a few people start right before Christmas, and Christmas is hard for people. They're overwhelmed by family. There's so much food. A lot of gyms are closed. With the weather this year, a ton of people were just struggling to get down the street, let alone trying to like get to a gym or go for a walk. Like all of that was really hard. And I had some people who were like, man, I really wanted to have a better start. And I'm like, this is the best start because we get to start working on these obstacles, figuring out what's working, what's not, and what are those obstacles, more importantly, triggering within you that in the past has led you to give up on the behavior, in the past has pushed you out of the action phase back into maybe just contemplation again. Because again, this isn't just a linear process.
Right.
But I encourage you, like, we're still in the action phase. You don't have to go back and think, well, do I need a whole new plan? No, we tweak what we have because you have a direction. We've fulfilled the previous stages. So if you're doing this on your own, remember, look, you don't need, a lot of times we don't always just need more education. We don't always just need more motivation. Sometimes we just need to stop and review what's working and what's not. And that's where I would encourage you to establish some kind of check-in process with yourself, whether that's checking in with yourself every day, which I do encourage through like some kind of journaling, checking in with yourself every week where you say, all right, I'm committing to this routine for a week. Like I committed to just I will try to write sometime in the week for a week. I knew it wasn't working after 3 days of not writing, but I didn't change it. I was like, "Nope, I'm gonna just see, maybe I'll kinda get on track." After a week, I didn't write at all. So this week, I'm like, "All right, I'm gonna write every day in the morning." And I'm like, "Well, what if there's a day where blah?" And I'm like, "Nope, every day in the morning, just for a week. Just commit to it for a week, and then you can evaluate at the end of the week." And I have, and it's worked really well, which it doesn't always happen that fast, but it's that balance of daily review, but weekly commitment. And I think that that's usually a really good place to start to really begin to set that action plan into place, but tweak it when it needs to be.
I'm excited for future episodes. We're going to dig into these stages and really explain. I think it'll be really cool to work through some of the things that are obviously a little bit deeper rooted and kind of create a platform for, you know, lasting change, but the ability to self-empower and do this journey on your own.
Definitely. And it's loaded. And I think one thing that'll be helpful is kind of going through other examples in our own life. Like as of right now, as a writer, I can't claim anything but the early action stages. I'm just now getting that point where I'm facilitating effective action. So I'm a baby in this, but I'm not a baby in other areas. So kind of talking about in our own lives areas that maybe we're a little bit more into that maintenance phase where things are second nature, because I'll have people tell me all the time, "You're so disciplined. I just wish I could be that disciplined." And I'm like, "I'm not disciplined." That's what I tell myself, or did for a while. Now I'm like, "All right, I wanna be the kind of person who's disciplined, so I'm gonna identify as that." But I would fight back internally when they tell me that, because 'cause I'm like, "Not really. I just kinda practiced this for a long time." But, like, you don't know how many days were just awful in the first year I was trying to do this. Like, this took a lot of time to practice becoming this person. So I think just us digging into our individual examples will be helpful to kind of paint that picture of what this looks like in practice. Because stepping stones, circles, like I love little infographics, I'm a nerd for that. But let's talk about the down and dirty of what this process can actually look like, and how those stages can be a little bit more, how there's a lot of fluctuation of behavior within each of those stages. That sound like a plan?
Sounds great.
Awesome. So this was just kind of an intro overview to the model, and I'm really excited to dig into this more. So be sure, guys, to stay tuned because we'll be, episode a week. We'll be talking about the rest of these stages and then really getting into some action steps about how you can move forward and leverage those different actions within each state so you can start to implement this in your own life. So thank you
Mm.
guys for watching and listening. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment below. Would love to hear your journeys in terms of things that you've maybe faced, things in which you are in the action stages, maybe even habits that you've gotten to maintenance. I think us just sharing our journeys individually can help give others a lot of insight. And I'm looking forward to the discussion. We will catch you guys next time on Time Under Tension.